Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Helen Ormoyd, co-founder of my Menopause Centre, and thank you so much for joining our webinar this evening, 2020U, How to Kickstart Good Habits and to Power Up Your Menopause. We're just kicking off, and I'm going to pause a moment while lots of you are joining. We're at over 50 people already, so I'm just going to hang on another few seconds, and then we'll kick off. We've lots of great stuff to get through this evening. So lots of you still logging in. It's excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. It's obviously a very seasonal topic to talk about well-being, nutrition, exercise, starting the new year, new beginning. So we've got almost 70 of you logged in at the moment, and it's still climbing, but I think we'll kick off. Lots of great things, as I mentioned. So we've all been there, started the new year with a very long list of resolutions and then ditched them days later because either they were too ambitious, too boring, or frankly, just too virtuous. But this really is an amazing time of year to start off on a new foot and to really look at how we can make meaningful changes to our lifestyle. Changes that really help to impact our overall well-being. And that's particularly important as we go through the menopause. We've got another good 40–50% of our lives ahead of us, and this really is the time to invest in our mental and physical well-being. So the secret to all of this is, of course, to take a sustainable approach, and that's exactly what we're going to be discussing this evening. So we've got some fantastic people joining us, starting with my Menopause Centre co-founder and my dear friend, Dr. Clare Spencer. If you want to wave, Clare, I'm sure most of you know Clare already. Then the co-founder of the amazing fitness community, Her Spirit. So big wave from Mel Berry there. And if you didn't get it, lovely branding there. So well done, Mel. And then the wonderful Joe Bolger, our fabulous partner and registered nutritionist. And we've had some questions submitted in advance. Thank you to those who sent them in. And we'll weave them into the conversation, and they're in particular around HRT. And in the meanwhile, if you have any questions, why don't you pop them into the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go through the evening. So Clare, let's kick off the question to you. Just in general, how does the menopause impact our overall well-being?
Yes, hi everybody. So as you'll have seen, as you'll have heard from multiple directions now, we've got estrogen receptors basically on most bits of our body. And so as you transition through the menopause and your estrogen levels are fluctuating up and down, as they're on average dropping, and then you move into the post-menopause where your estrogen levels are low and then stay low, so many parts of your body are affected. So we know that there are physical symptoms. Most people will have heard of hot flushes, but bladder symptoms, aches and pains that conspire to stop us wanting to move. Psychological symptoms to do battle with that really can result in loss of motivation and just feeling low, flat. So you're not exactly wanting to attack your diet and want to go out and exercise. And then cognitive symptoms as well. So that horrible fuzzy brain fog, poor concentration that doesn't exactly make you feel great about yourself. So lots of symptoms that sort of all conspire in a vicious cycle just to make you feel pretty rubbish, which is not a depressing thing. It's just, it means that we can identify what's going on to be able to do something about it.
Yeah, and that's the key thing, isn't it, Claire? Really raising awareness of all of those symptoms. And so I know one of the questions that you get asked very often in the clinic is around weight gain. And so many women ask, clearly myself included, why am I putting on weight? It's creeping up despite my healthy eating, exercise, and so hard to shift.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's actually quite difficult to answer it exactly because there are so many factors that just conspire against you. So There's a direct effect of hormones. So if you lose estrogen, there is lots of evidence to suggest that that affects how fat is distributed around your body. So your weight actually might stay the same. And there are studies showing that actual weight number doesn't change as you transition through the menopause for many, many women. But what does change is how you deposit fat. So you can turn from a pear-shaped where fat is around your bum and your thighs to more of an apple where it's distributed around your middle. And that's important because of the risk of heart disease that increases as a result. And actually that fat around your middle can then also increase your risk, as well as the drop in estrogen, of insulin resistance. And that's really where our bodies don't handle carbohydrate in the same way as they used to. So we're more likely to put weight on, and it can be more difficult to shift. Not impossible, just more difficult.
Yeah.
And then obviously compacting onto that is, as I've alluded to already, factors making it less likely that you want to move. And then if you feel grim, and you know, it's so easy, isn't it, to reach for a glass of wine to help you get to sleep, empty calories, to reach for sort of something slightly more unhealthy, but quite delicious, to make you feel better. So it's not a simple answer, lots of different things working against you.
Yeah, and I know Joe is going to touch on some of these when we come to nutrition as well. And Claire, one of the things that doesn't really get spoken about often enough is post-menopausal health. And I think there are two key things that are very pertinent to the conversation this evening. And it'd be great if you could just say a few words maybe around bone health and heart health.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So bone health, and what we're talking about is the increased risk of osteoporosis or thinning of the bones, where they become a little more fragile and more likely to fracture. So before the menopause, actually, we lose only a tiny bit of our bone density. But then as you go through the menopause, you lose estrogen, which is crucial for maintaining bone density. And so the risk of osteoporosis increases. And it's one of those things that doesn't really affect us now in 40s or 50s, but it's something that can then creep up and cause an issue in later life, where if you fall, or even if you don't fall, your bones are more prone to fracturing. And, you know, the numbers are massive. 1 in 3 women are affected by osteoporosis at some time in their life. The good news is, if you know about it, there are changes that you can make now. You can optimize things now, which I'm sure we'll go on and talk about, to help prevent fractures, you know, painful spinal fractures, loss in height in the future. And then cardiovascular disease, again, might not affect us now, but before the menopause, our risk of heart disease is lower than men. Estrogen is really protective, and as you transition through the menopause and then enter post-menopause, actually our risk of heart disease increases, and it's a massive killer. Sorry, that sounds really dreadful, doesn't it? But, you know, not to belittle the risk of breast cancer at all, but almost twice the number of women sadly die from heart disease than they do of breast cancer. And so again, it's something that we can do about now. It's something that we can tackle to help prevent the changes as we get older.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Again, just so important to think about bone health and heart health, and not really discussed as much as, say, some of the other symptoms, but critical to long-term health. And actually linked to that, one of the questions that's just come up in the chat is, can perimenopause cause bad heart palpitations? So maybe a word on that before we come to our next question.
Yeah, so important to say that palpitations don't necessarily increase your risk of heart disease, but palpitations are a really common symptom of the perimenopause, and they generally settle. It's time to go and see your GP if they're really frequent, if they're upsetting you, bothering you, keeping you awake, or if they're triggered by exercise. It's good to just go and get it checked out, but you know, most of the time they'll settle and they won't cause a long-term issue in the future.
Brilliant, thank you, Claire. And then last question for you for now before we turn over to Mel. Claire, in your experience, what role does lifestyle play in managing symptoms?
Yeah, I think lifestyle has a massive impact. I mean, the evidence is there to show us that, you know, I know that weight loss is more challenging as you transition through the menopause, but if you are carrying a little extra weight around, we know that if you lose it, there's a reduced risk. It can reduce hot flushes, increase sense of well-being. We know that exercise can increase well-being. It's good for bone health, as Mel will talk about, and maintaining muscle mass. But also lifestyle in terms of just learning how to switch off, don't you think? Learning how to, I know for me, just trying to switch off all the sounds that's zipping around in your head can be very, very useful to help get rid of some, you know, help manage some of the anxiety. Cognitive behavioral therapy, etc. Talking therapies can help, slightly veering off subject, with some of the psychological symptoms. So lifestyle and diet, super critical.
Brilliant, both of which we'll cover in more detail in a moment. Thank you, Claire. And Mel, so with her spirit, you and the lovely Holly are building a community of women in their 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond who want to be stronger, fitter and healthier. Obviously so important as we're living a lot longer than previous generations of women. So just a question to kick off, what advice do you give your members to be stronger and fitter?
Yeah, so for us, community is at the heart of everything that we do, and that's really important because that peer-to-peer belonging gives people the confidence to say, I look like that person. And coaching, you know, people like the Clares of this world, they come with knowledge and expertise that then helps to direct and inspire. And little challenges. So it's, you know, one that I know, Helen, you've signed up for, and it's our latest challenge in terms of couch to kilo. Just gives you a little bit of focus. And when you see everybody else around you going crazy, then you feel inspired and kind of motivated by those around you. I'm waiting for Claire and Joe to join us. And you do realise it's not too late for you to come and join us for couch to kilos, both of you.
Thanks, Mel.
Yeah, that's Mel. Thanks for throwing that in, Mel. That was not scripted, but anyway, I'm carrying it for the team, Mel. Good.
Yeah, and look, you know, the reason for us with couch to kilos, and let's touch on it in a very serious kind of note, and Claire, you've obviously kind of highlighted, which we talk very often about the chief medical officer in terms of 150 minutes of physical activity, and that's moving, that's raising your heart for your heart to get that heart health. The one thing that doesn't get talked about is 2 strength sessions, and strength is so vitally important. And we, through the process of developing couch to kilos, work with one of our amazing advisory board members. It's a wonderful guy called Professor Greg White. And you talked about that kind of latter stage in life. And when we lose our independence, it's ordinarily because we're not able to move. And one of those things is getting up and down. So for us, it's around giving women that confidence to do something that, if you look at the myths, it's, oh, I don't really feel and know what I'm going to do. So that links into our coaching element. I don't feel that I've got anybody to do that with. So that's again around that whole community piece. And for us, it's about simplicity of knowledge. And you both talk, you know, very integrally about knowledge is power. And we need to distill that knowledge that you feel really, really motivated. And you touched on it there, Claire, and it's a personal story of mine. One of those things is muscle loss. And people just think, well, you know, it's not too bad, but we start to lose significant muscle in our mid to early 30s. And if you don't have that, that has a significant effect, doesn't it, Claire, on bone density and being able to move. And for me, that was one of the things that I really, really kind of saw. And Claire, I know we talked earlier, the need to retain muscle for women, no matter what your age, is vitally important for your health, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, loss of estrogen and to some extent, possibly loss of testosterone as well, which starts really from your 30s. We know that you lose muscle mass. And it's so important, isn't it? For, well, number 1, bone health, but number 2, protection of joints. You know, if you're moving, you're protecting your joints, keeping the muscle tone there. And in the long term, as you say, prevention of falls, from maintaining stability and maintaining strength. And it makes you feel good. I mean, I've started weight training. I've never weight trained before. And I'm really surprised by how good it's made me feel. not just for vanity reasons.
But it is
Yeah.
that confidence piece and
Yeah.
everything that we do, and you both know well, and many people that are on tonight from Her Spirit, there's the physical, but there's the mental. You know, I feel proud. I feel that I can stand taller. And that's the correlation of I now feel it. And it's about how you use that for life. And we talk a lot around, I can pick the kids up, I can get my shopping bags out. I actually feel more capable to be able to do the things that I want to. And everything that we developed was around understanding behaviors, that if you start to feel a little bit better, you start to feel a little bit more confident. And that is, you know, integral. And for us, in terms of Couch to Kilos as a specific, everybody can do that, because we've got 3 levels. So level 1, I'm new to it, haven't really done that much. We don't have any equipment. I can't afford to join the gym. Come and join us for level 1 with our wonderful coach Bex, and she'll take you through, you know, the moves that you can. You then start to peer over the second level, which is level 2, which I know, Helen, you're joining and you're kind of loving part of that. And that's our wonderful coach Elle, that then again gives you the capabilities and understanding to say, I've had these weights that have been propping the door open for many days, or many probably years. How do I use them? Okay, I understand. And that's that link back into, obviously, you know, coaches and the knowledge. And the third, you know, people like myself and Holly that have decked out the garage to make it into kind of a mini gym. We've gone on a journey with British weightlifting. And if you talk about, again, one of the health benefits for me is mobility. You know, I starting to go down the spirals of, I've got, you know, just recently been diagnosed with arthritis in my right hip. And I thought that would have a real negative impact. I've never felt so good by doing that. So again, that mobility piece is just something, please, please, please have a go. Just do something that gives you that kind of strength benefits, because it's so vital for every woman.
And Mel, we've got some nice feedback in here from Jane, saying that she signed up. She's in her second week of Couch to Kilo, and she's doing it for upper body, and she's feeling, you know, great from doing it. And Claire, one of the things we discussed was that there are some conditions or some symptoms that women can have that can put them off exercising. And you and I were chatting today about pelvic floor, because I know for me, at the risk of oversharing, I have no core. It's one of the reasons, you know, I'm so keen to do Couch to Kilo, and I would like to have a strong pelvic floor for many reasons, not in the least having given birth to 2 very big boys, as you can imagine. And so, but I know certainly for me, I'm much more comfortable doing these exercises at home rather than in the gym. What are some of the conditions that women have, say leaky bladders or other symptoms, Claire, that women might have that might inhibit them from taking part in exercise, and how can they treat them?
Yeah, no. So, and this is where, you know, as I said before, vicious cycles really kick in. So all of the symptoms virtually of the menopause can really present a barrier. So yes, leaky bladder. So it can be embarrassing. It can make you not want to go out. It's really unpleasant. Aches and pains that you can experience can worsen in the menopause, because estrogen is so important for joints, preventing inflammation of joints, integrity of connective tissue. Hot flushes, you know, if the minute your temperature rises by 1 degree, you just melt. You know, you're not exactly going to want to go to the gym or do very much. But I think as well, though, I think that psychological symptoms can almost have a bigger impact. You know, that loss of motivation. So many women say to me, I'm just not exercising. I just can't get out of the door. It's a loss of confidence as well. You know, don't want to put on your Lycra, don't want to go out, don't want to see other people. And then obviously the cognitive symptoms that I've touched on as well, where you just brain fog. How can I get myself out? You know, it sounds really depressing, doesn't it? But I talk a lot about vicious cycles. It's not one thing. It's often one thing affects another, which affects another, which affects another. And it's why it's so important to find just one thing that you can do. And it may be doing something new, even though you might not feel like it in the slightest. like starting to work with some weights, or just putting your trainers on, doing 5 minutes, listening to a book, you know, so yeah, lots of different factors.
Just pick up one of the questions from Alison about having tennis elbow, and is it too late? Alison, no. Just come and do the, you know, you can get the support from people like, you know, Clare as your GP to understand what that is. And ordinarily that's, you know, an element of repetitive strain, and they can help you from the diagnosis. But getting that strength from everything else surrounding that area will probably have quite a significant impact. So yeah, please, anyone that's going, oh, I'm not sure, just have a go, just get moving, and you'd be amazed. And, you know, I guess for me to, you know, close on Couch to Kilo, we have a phenomenal community that pick people up when they're down, and they help to celebrate when you have an amazing success. So just come and be part of it. I can't guarantee that you're not going to sign up for some crazy event off the back of it, but if you look into my eyes for too long, then I can only but apologize.
Yeah, but the other good thing, Mel, don't you think, about things like doing that, it's really easy to see the feedback. You know, you start some things and you just think, I am just not improving with this. But I think starting to work your muscles is one of those bits you can easily see and progress. You might be able to do one press up, or not, no press ups in my case, you know, and progress quite quickly. You get the positive feedback.
Yeah, and we've got that reward loop, and that was really important for us when we developed Couch to Kilos. In the first week, the third week, and the sixth week, then you just get to kind of see. And last night's session live was brilliant, because people go, oh, I've done that for an extra 10 seconds. Is repetition is really important. So please don't just do it once. Our suggestion is try and do it 3 times a week, because again, you start to see, I can see that I'm getting many, you know, it's called being buried, that when you've then done things. But yeah, look, you know, Claire, I know you're a massive advocate, and I know, Joe, you link into that from a nutritional point of view. And again, thanks, you know, for giving us this opportunity to just have fun together, which is really important.
No, brilliant. And then just a couple of things. So to Alison, I have tennis elbow as well, and definitely would recommend doing the exercise. That it helps rebuild the tendons. It's all about doing it in the manageable pain level. And we've got lots of questions coming in around HRT. We're going to talk about HRT in a few minutes, so we will get to as many questions as possible. As you can appreciate, we can't address very individual or very specific questions, because Claire doesn't have medical history and everything, but we look at the question and try to get at the general question behind it. But before we come to that, Joe, January is the time of year, as we discussed, where so many of us think, right, this is the year I'm going to get healthier, shed a few pounds and so on. So as a nutritionist, what are your recommendations regarding healthy eating? And in your view, why, you know, when we spoke, I know you're dead against fatty diets. If you could help us to understand why.
Yeah, I think those of us that are sort of hitting menopause and perimenopause now, we probably grew up in the diet culture of the 1980s and 90s. It's all about low calories, going for the burn, restricting, eating nothing to sort of lose weight, which sort of maybe works in the short term, but really doesn't have the longer term effects. And I think it's the same with maybe like diet clubs, and you're working to a certain calorie allowance as well. Again, it works for a while, but it's hard to maintain in your day-to-day life. The same with very restrictive diets, such as sort of like Atkins or keto. Although some people do take them medically, you are restricting whole food groups. And I don't really like to see whole food groups being restricted in diets. I don't really think it's for your health overall. I don't really think it's a good thing to do. I guess my sort of beliefs and my sort of mantra is about your food groups, really. So looking closer at your food groups and learning a bit more about them, especially about your good fats. I think we need to move away from the narrative that fat is bad. There are some bad fats, if you like trans fats and hydrogenated fats that you find in like cakes and biscuits and some sugary cereals and processed food. Highly processed stuff, so they're not great, but obviously, you know, there are some really good fats. You know, our brain is made of 60% fat, so it does need to be fed. Fats such as eggs, oily fish, avocados, nuts, seeds, natural yogurts, these are all fats that we need to bring into our diet. Our fats are there to create hormones, at the synthesis way back of the hormone chain is cholesterol, which helps to build hormones, and cholesterol is a fat. So we need fat to be able to do that. It also helps, fats also help in the creation of our neurotransmitters. So our happy hormones such as dopamine and serotonin, and it helps to build those to make us hopefully feel happier. Moving on from fats, we've also got protein. I think Mel would probably agree when it comes to building muscle, protein is super important. And I guess that not all of us are really eating as much protein as we should. I often advise clients to go for sort of 100 grams a day. But that's sort of like, that could be like 2 to 3 eggs in the morning, a tin of sardines at lunch, and like a palm-sized portion of meat, fish, tofu, whatever your protein is in the evening. And again, protein is amazing for sort of building muscle, building neurotransmitters as well. And it's essential that we have it in our diet. And also fats and proteins. People are probably thinking, oh my God, all this talk about fat and protein, but it helps us feel fuller. So if your meal is containing these food groups in, decent amounts, you're not gonna, think about snacking as much. They're great for satiety. You'll feel far fuller for longer. You're not gonna wanna go for the biscuit tin potentially in the afternoon. And so I think fats and proteins are just super important. And it's, not the narrative that we've been used to. I think a lot of us have grown up with, that we need to be cutting these things out to lose weight. Meat's fatty, or fish is, salmon's fatty, and I can't have any fat, and it's not the right way forward. Having said that, however, I think we also need to think about carbohydrates, and also touching on your point, Claire, about insulin resistance. And as we go into menopause and perimenopause, we become less, as the estrogen lowers, we become less able to process and work with insulin in our bodies, and sugary carbs, an excess of those could lead to insulin resistance. So I think it's about reducing your carbs, not cutting them out. I wouldn't suggest for 1 minute that we all go Atkins or keto or do anything crazy, but it's about learning about your carbs and the ones that are sort of like healthier for you, that your body finds it easier to process, the natural carbs, looking at whole foods first, not looking at processed. So sort of sweet potatoes and quinoa versus, say, a white potato and white pasta or white rice. So it's just sort of like being a bit more selective about the carbs that you use, but your protein and your veggies should definitely take up most of your plate, and carbs should only be a much smaller portion than I think most of us, I guess, believe. So I think, and also I think we're going to talk about gut health. I'm rambling here, but I think your gut's really important. About your gut, your microbiome, it's a really important organ that we have in our body. 70% of our immune system is stored in our gut microbiome, which is kind of crazy. I think it's really important that we support that by introducing lots of different plant foods, fruits and veg, though mostly fruit, mostly veg. I would say fruits are great, but let's keep them sort of smaller than the proportion of veg. And plants are great because they populate your microbiome and they help to feed the bugs and the microbes there to keep your gut healthy, which in turn will keep you a lot healthier and keep your metabolism working a lot better and potentially help you to shift that weight. So it's and also increase your fiber. So the more veggies you're putting in there, the more plants you're putting into your gut, the more you're going to poo frequently, and that will again assist with helping to shift pounds as you go through your sort of new you of 2022. So yeah, there's lots of different things you can sort of do. And I don't think I can really mention food without mentioning alcohol and drink. And
it's been dry January and all that as well.
Yeah, no one's going to love me, but I think we need to think beyond dry January and how our relationship with alcohol and what that looks like. And again, not cutting out completely, but cutting back the whole year round. Being sort of like almost strong enough also to say, no, actually, I don't want to drink. And there's such a lot of peer pressure around drinking and alcohol consumption. And sometimes I think it's just having that sort of, no, I'm not drinking at the moment, and just being sort of proud about that. Looking at botanicals and alcohol alternatives, there's more and more quite exciting stuff coming on the market as well, I think. But alcohol is not our friend in menopause or perimenopause, and I often get like evil looks for sort of saying that. But it's how we process our estrogen. Alcohol can cause it to raise if we're in the perimenopause phase, which isn't necessarily a good thing. It impairs our sleep and our mood, and we're not 25 anymore, and we can't really deal with those big nights and big hangovers, and they're just not good for us, really.
Yeah, I think it's clear, from what both you and Dr. Clare have said, that it is something to to reflect on, I suppose, in terms of changing lifestyle, changing the habits of a lifetime, I suppose, as well. And I know for a lot of women, alcohol can trigger hot flushes as well. There's been a couple of questions in here around diet. One of the questions is around fasting and Ramadan, and if you've any suggestions for, you know, good meals to eat during Ramadan, when you can only eat after sunset and before sunrise. And I know, Mel, you've mentioned you have a podcast on this too as well.
Yeah, if it's fasting specifically within Ramadan, I would then go for, yes, something with a good high fat and again protein content to keep you nice and full. I don't know whether you thought you'd really say a nice, you know, if you do eat meat or fish, a good portion of sort of red meat or oily fish like salmon, with lots of nice vegetables, maybe like a sweet potato with that, but definitely have like a good, really good portion of protein in that meal, which will hopefully help you to feel fuller during your fast the next day. And in general about fasting, I think fasting can be for the right person, can actually be quite a good thing to do as you move into menopause and perimenopause. But yeah, just have a high fat, high protein, non-processed food meal to get you into the Ramadan. Yeah, fast.
Great.
I would offer into that conversation is, for her spirit, we're based on 3 elements: mind, body and feel, so nutritional, physical and emotional health. So if you want solutions based on so much that obviously we've just been kind of talking about and Joe's being said, just go to our fuel section, and again, really easy recipes are put in there. We did an amazing podcast with Dr. Megan Rossi, lots of really kind of simple ideas. I think people get really confused, you know, what does 100 grams of protein look like? I don't really understand, I can't contextualize that. For us, it's about providing solutions and sustainable solutions. So look, come and have a look again, and any advice and help that we can have on that one, would love to.
Great.
Brilliant, thanks. And Joe, what are your thoughts on the answer to the multi-million-dollar question, how to stay motivated and make it part of your day-to-day routine, as opposed to an initiative or an effort a couple of times a year?
I think slow, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's a bit of a cliche, I know, but I think slow, sustainable change is the way forward. Not being like, the hair about it and just racing. There's no real finish line. What we're trying to, I think, do here, I think definitely with myself and Mel, trying to create habits sort of you can take with you for life. That's eating habits, exercise habits. I think I like to think about what can I add in as opposed to what I can take away. And sometimes when people think of diet, they think, well, I can't have that anymore, and I can't have that anymore, and that's really bad for me, so I can't have that, so all I can have is this. It's about thinking that, every week, or, let's add something in, let's bring a new vegetable to the table, go for some strange looking thing you've seen in the supermarket, you've always been a bit too scared to, it could be a fruit or a veg, or I'm going to give tofu a go this week, or get flax seeds, I'm going to get some of those, or chia seeds, and try them out. So I think it's more about expanding what you currently do, as opposed to restricting yourself further, and opening up your world of food and things you can do.
Brilliant, thanks, Joe. And Mel, what are your top tips for making exercise, healthy eating part of your routine?
Yeah, so first thing, this week is historically the week where people do fall off the bandwagon, because you get very excited. But for me, it's about community, and I wouldn't do the things that I do if I didn't have people around me to inspire, motivate, and for us, it's about social connection. So we always talk about ads rather than take away. So mine would find somebody that will give you the support and help that you need, and have a good time during it. So yeah, come and join, get involved.
Brilliant. Claire, now we're going to focus in on HRT now. As I said, there have been quite a number of questions in the chat, and the questions that were submitted in advance were HRT related, so we will come to them. But Claire, clearly big question is, notwithstanding the importance of lifestyle, so exercise, nutrition and so on, what role does HRT have to play in all of this?
Yeah, so HRT can play a crucial role. The preface is always HRT is not for everybody. There will be some people for whom it's more risky, but for the majority of women, HRT is an option, and the benefits will outweigh the risks. So if we take it just step by step, so the first thing obviously is HRT is really effective at managing menopause symptoms if you get the right combination, the right balance for you. And so what I commonly hear is it's used as a springboard to then get back into exercising to address diet. So HRT can help your hot flushers. It can help take away some of the aches and pains, particularly if they're more related to the menopause and loss of estrogen. HRT is really good for helping the psychological symptoms of the menopause. So as I've said, motivation. Vaginal estrogens can help with irritative vaginal vulval symptoms that can, stop people from exercising. And vaginal estrogens can have a small part to play, not the whole part, in helping with incontinence. Incontinence needs proper physio, needs addressing separately, but HRT can definitely play a supportive role in that. And so number one, it's going to make you feel better. You want to go and do more. The lifestyle stuff all kicks in. Number two, HRT, if you start it early in the menopause transition or under the age of 60, so that's within 10 years of your last period or under the age of 60, there's very clear evidence that it can help reduce the risk of heart disease and also decrease mortality as a result of heart disease. So the estrogen, it's really interesting. It helps by preventing buildup of plaques of calcium in your blood vessels, helps keep your blood vessels nice and stretchy, as well as helping you want to exercise. And there's also really good evidence that it can help prevent osteoporosis and it can help prevent fractures as a result of osteoporosis. And that effect probably lingers more than the length of time that you're taking HRT for, we're increasingly recognizing. So HRT helps in a number of different ways, but definitely can have long-term health benefits on its own, as well as helping symptoms.
Yeah, brilliant, Claire. And Claire, one of the questions is a question we often get, and a great question is, how long should I be taking HRT before I can expect to see any benefits?
So in terms of symptoms, so most people get control of the symptoms pretty quickly. And by that, I mean sort of 4-6 weeks up to about 3 months. It's sort of more common than not. You don't get it right on the first shot. So it may take a bit longer. You may have to do some tweaking to find the right hormones to suit you. Don't be despondent. There's always another option. There's always another dose to get to. In terms of preventing heart disease, in terms of osteoporosis, I don't know the exact answer. I'm not sure if there is sort of an arbitrary cutoff. You have to take it for this length of time to get the benefit. But it's just taking it. It's just being on it for as long as you want to be taking it for. Certainly heart disease, you get the protective effect for as long as you're taking HRT for. And as I've said, with the effects of bones, probably for a time after that as well. So different ways of answering it. Symptoms pretty quickly, long-term health effects. It's a long-term, you're in it for the long haul.
And one of the questions that was submitted in advance then links to that. So Karen, thank you for your question. So Karen's question is, she's in her early 50s, so 53, and hasn't had a period, has one period in the last couple of years, has some symptoms, menopause symptoms, but she doesn't think they're too bad. Her question is really, when should she be thinking about HRT? When symptoms are uncomfortable, and does she need to get her hormone levels checked? Does she need blood tests to help with this decision?
Okay, so number one, blood tests. You don't need blood tests to diagnose the menopause unless you're under the age of 40, when it's definitely recommended. And between the age of 40 and 45, it can be helpful if there's uncertainty about the diagnosis. Over the age of 45, blood tests aren't really that helpful, as I'm sure many people have heard me say, and in the NICE guideline. In terms of when to start it, really you don't have to wait for your symptoms to become dreadful. there's no badge of honor in this. You know, if you are having symptoms of the menopause transition that are interfering with your ability to sort of live your best life, they're interfering with your sense of well-being, you don't have to wait. HRT is not without risk. There is a very small, and it is really small, increased risk of breast cancer if you take certain types of HRT. So you have to bear that in mind. But the benefits of HRT, particularly in your 50s, definitely by far outweigh those small increase in risks. And the risks actually are also outweighed, we haven't mentioned, by lifestyle choices. So the risk of breast cancer in your 50s is greater if you drink on average a glass of wine or two units of alcohol a day, or if your body mass index is 30 or more, that more than doubles your risk of breast cancer. So yeah, in your 50s, benefits definitely outweigh the risks. In your 60s, it's less clear. The evidence, the data is just a little bit lacking, particularly for the newer, safer types of HRT. You just literally have to review it year on year. How am I feeling, just in terms of how long you continue to take the HRT for. But yeah, you don't have to wait. Sorry, it's my very long answer.
No, Claire, it's great, because I think you've probably at least in part answered Suzanne's question. So again, thank you for the question, Suzanne. So Suzanne's question is, so Suzanne is 57 and she's wondering if it's worth considering HRT even if she doesn't have symptoms, so that she gets the benefits for things such as osteoporosis. And if it is, how would she know what dosage she should take in order to get that benefit?
Yeah, that's actually quite a tricky question to answer. The British Menopause Society, the International Menopause Society, don't recommend HRT purely for disease prevention in the absence of symptoms. But having said that, I know many women who do take it in that way, or just minimal symptoms, because of the benefits. And it really is looking at your own benefit risk ratio. It's worth talking it through with somebody. It isn't a straightforward answer. In terms of the dose, then we know that any amount of estrogen is going to help with osteoporosis. In the olden days, we used to think it was a standard dose, so that's a 50 microgram patch, 2 pumps of gel, or 2 milligrams orally. But actually, the evidence is increasing that any amount of estrogen is better than no estrogen in reducing the risk of osteoporosis. Heart disease is less clear, but as long as as long as you're absorbing it fully, as long as your blood levels are more than a postmenopausal blood level, then it's likely to be having a benefit.
Brilliant, thank you, Claire. I'm going to, conscious of time, we're coming up to 1/4 the hour. I'll go through some of the other questions. So we've had a question from a lady who's been diagnosed with POI, and I think really sorry, because I know that must be very, very tough. So I'm very sorry to hear that. You started HRT, and what you're saying is you found exercise so difficult as it wipes you out. You're feeling better with HRT, but scared to exercise as you don't want to feel horrendous afterwards. Any thoughts or advice, Claire, for this lady?
Yes. So POI is premature ovarian insufficiency. That's menopause under the age of 40. So I would speak to your doctor and make sure you've sort of optimized your HRT, that your symptoms are controlled. Make sure there's no other reason for feeling wiped out. So make sure that you've had your iron levels checked, your vitamin D, and make sure your thyroid is functioning fully. And then I would say just be really sensible. I would increase it really slowly. If you haven't exercised for a while, you'll feel wiped out anyway. And so don't set big targets, just go slowly. If that means just walking quickly with your trainers on to begin with, whatever exercise you choose, take it easy and set realistic expectations and just build it up. It will come.
Yeah, and I'd echo yours. We talk about small steps lead to big changes, and find what's right for you. We have a community that loves open water swimming, and I've been well and truly cajoled into swimming in cold water. And it's that I guess there's that misconception you have to do a lot. We literally get in and dip and get moving, and And we hadn't talked about earlier, look, yoga, Pilates, just things that just help with your functional mobility, that you may feel, okay, I feel a little bit kind of better. You don't have to go out and, you know, hit the wall by doing masses. Just do something and let us again support you through that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mel. Thanks, Claire. Claire, one of our favorite myths here, one of the ladies on the call this evening says she was advised by her doctor to come off her HRT because he thought she'd been on it long enough.
Oh, so sorry, that's really unprofessional of me. You know, that's your, I would, if anybody tries to arbitrarily stop your HRT, I think you just need to ask them why. That can be challenging in a short 10-minute consultation where it's fast. There's no arbitrary cutoff. The longer you're on HRT for, year on year, there is a small increase in risk of breast cancer. And that's a fact across the board. But as long as you accept that small increase in risk and you're still getting the benefits from it, you don't have to stop it at any particular age. And actually, going back to the lady with POI, it's really important that if you're under 40 or you have an early menopause in your early 40s, that you continue to take it up to at least until the age of 50, 51. To get your bone protection, cardiovascular disease prevention, and what we haven't talked about actually also probably prevention of dementia as well. So no need to arbitrarily stop it, and don't be afraid to ask the reason.
Yeah, and great question. And I've just stuck a link in there into the chat on a blog that Claire did on HRT myths busted. There's some other good ones in there as well. So another great question in here, Claire, regarding HRT. Are patches less risky than tablets? Christina's worried about the risk of taking tablets.
Yeah, no, really good question. So if you swallow estrogen, it goes from your gut to your liver before it swims around your body. And that means that it increases your risk of blood clots on legs and lungs and other places and stroke by a small amount. So the risk is doubled, which sounds quite scary. But actually, if you're at low risk, you go from a low risk to a higher low risk. So maybe 2 or 3 cases per 1,000 for somebody in their early 50s to 4 to 5 to 6 cases per 1,000. If you've got risk factors for blood clots, like smoking, carrying a little extra weight, being overweight, obese, or had a previous one, then it can be more risky, or, you know, sort of too risky, migraine included there as well. If you have the estrogen through your skin, so either a patch or spray or gel, prescribed gallons of gel, then it doesn't affect your risk of blood clotting. So even if you were at a higher baseline risk, having the estrogen through your skin won't further increase that. So that's it's completely the right thing to be asking. Yes, you're absolutely right. Swallowing estrogen is more risky than having it through your skin.
Brilliant. And Claire, rather straightforward one here from Helen. Great question though. Is HRT for everyone?
Yeah, I think that is a really great question, because I would say probably not, actually. There are some women who are super sensitive to hormones. Even adding back the bioidentical hormones can be challenging. And then some women feel this horrible sense of failure, that they're not feeling this amazing sense of well-being that, you know, a lot of women do feel with HRT. And there are other ways to manage your symptoms as well as HRT, as we've touched on: lifestyle changes, there's medication, there's CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So there are a very small handful of women who will be advised medically not to take HRT. There are women with conditions where the evidence is really poor as to the safety or the risks of HRT. And then there'll be women who just don't tolerate it. They're very, very few and far between. Yeah. And then it's looking at the bigger picture. It's looking at your health in general and what else can you do to prevent those long-term health issues.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Claire. And I should say I've posted into the chat some links to the brilliant resource articles that Claire's written on the website around HRT. We've lots of information around HRT, different types of HRT, how to apply it, videos and so on. So have a good look around the website. And as I say, I've put some links in. If we just take the last couple of questions. So I'll take two together because they're very related. It's kind of the reverse of Helen's question. So one from Jane and one from another lady. Does it matter if you don't take HRT? Jane took it and didn't feel better, but now she's wondering about the benefit of HRT for some of the risks. And another lady has mentioned that if your symptoms are manageable, you're active, you barely drink alcohol and you eat well, is there a need to take HRT?
Yeah, no, exactly. You know, you can do it yourself. As I said, you know, you can prevent those long-term health risks by looking at your diet, enough calcium, enough vitamin D, Mediterranean diets, for example, reduce the risk of heart disease, keep moving, don't smoke, don't drink. No, absolutely. So, what was the first question again, Helen? About I'm just looking at it. So it's about if you're manageable and you're very active, do you need to take it? And the other is if you don't have symptoms and you stop taking it, are there benefits there? Yeah, particularly if you haven't tolerated HRT. So it is, if you want to take HRT and if you are struggling with symptoms, but you've tried an HRT and you just didn't get on with it, sometimes people will then stop and think that's it, HRT is not for me. But actually, there are lots of different options, and a lot of the time people won't have tried the body identical or bioidentical hormones, and that can be better tolerated. You can tweak the dose, you can tweak the progestogen part of it. Often that's not tolerated very well. What I'm saying is, don't write it off if the first one didn't work or you didn't get the right dose. If you want to take it, if you don't want to take it, that's fine. Just make sure your lifestyle is optimized for long-term health benefits.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Claire. That is fantastic. Really conscious of time. Joe, one quickie for you from someone, and then I'll close on last couple of questions for Claire on HRT. Question from Janet. Thank you, Janet. Are there any foods that counter the reduction in hormone? I hear of phytoestrogens. What are they?
Phytoestrogens are a group of foods, and there's quite a lot of different. Soy, for example, is a phytoestrogen, and there's various flax seeds and various plants that are phytoestrogens, and there are sort of differing points of view as to whether they add in or take away estrogen, and as to their benefit. Soy is one that I come across probably the most. Soy isoflavones, which people do find sort of beneficial. So I would say with something like a soy, have some, but not too much. And I think in this country, a lot of the soy, for example, is GMO, not like in the Far East where it's far more natural. So do be mindful of the amount of soy that you're taking in. But other things like, say, flax seeds, etc., is another phytoestrogen, really, really good for you. I think they should be definitely part of your diet, but the jury is out as to whether they add in or whether they take away your estrogen. So it's almost sometimes a little bit viewed as an adaptogen, that it will adapt to what your body needs at the time. But I would say in moderation, take definitely soy in moderation, soy products, and try and use organic soy if you can, and tofu and tempeh and all of those types of phytoestrogens, and make sure you sort of use the most organic form of that, I would say.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jo. That was really clear. Thank you. And the reason I'm smiling is the tip for getting the sticky bits of the patches off coconut oil, getting off the bottom. I would agree. Yes, that's very good.
Yes, baby oil
as
well. Yeah. Baby oil can be helpful.
So I'm going to, unfortunately, we're going to have to close it at these, if we take these last two questions, and I'm conscious we didn't get to everything. There were HRT questions. As Claire is answering these questions, I'm going to pop in the links again on HRT. So Claire, two questions. One, again, a great question that we often get for you as well is that Debbie is on Everil 50 patches. Her GP wouldn't prescribe, I presume, other HRT as her mum had breast cancer. And is there anything else or any other types of HRT that might be appropriate for her?
Yes, no, absolutely. So in a nutshell, really briefly, HRT, if you have a womb, is two hormones. It's the estrogen, which we've spoken about. Estrogen can thicken the womb lining, so you need to take the progestogen as well. So in Everil Conti patches, you've got estradiol, which is body identical, same as your ovaries made estrogen. And then you have norethisterone, which is a synthetic progestogen. So an alternative to that is to have the same estrogen, but take separately eutrogeston, which is progesterone. It's the same progestogen that your ovaries make. There's a brand new tablet that's just been brought out called Bijuve, which has both the estrogen and the progesterone mixed in that you swallow. But most of the time people take the estrogen separately as a gel, patch, spray, and then you take the eutrogeston separately. And there is observational data suggesting that the risk of breast cancer is lower if you take eutrogeston than if you take the synthetic norethisterone, or the other one is called Provera, the other synthetic progestogen. So it is absolutely possible. You just need to separate them out and ask your GP to prescribe eutrogeston with the estrogen separately. I hope that's clear. If you look on the HRT bit on the website, we've made a table showing you the different types of each hormone.
Brilliant, thank you, Claire. And I've posted some of the links into the chat of the different articles that we have on HRT, and we've upgraded the search function on the website. So if you type HRT, it'll bring you up a list of all of the different resources that we have available there. And then last question from Amanda: are there any considerations about starting HRT when you don't know your biological background? So Amanda's been adopted and is wondering if that would impact you know, doctors' willingness to prescribe or the suitability.
Yeah, it shouldn't really. The only time it could become an issue is if there was a really strong family history of breast cancer or other genetic conditions increasing your risk of cancer. And that's so that potentially could affect your baseline risk of breast cancer yourself. You can still take HRT even if you are at higher risk of breast cancer. It's just the old knowledge is power. You know, you understand your risk a little bit better. If you had a strong family history of stroke or blood clots, then you would definitely be advised to not swallow the estrogen, but to have the estrogen through your skin. So that's another reason that it could be important. If there was a strong family history of osteoporosis, it would sort of encourage you, almost make it more important to take HRT if you were considering it. So there are a few reasons why it can become important, but it shouldn't stop you taking HRT.
Brilliant.
If you wanted to.
Okay, thank you. And I feel I should, I just realized Elizabeth had a question around vaginal atrophy. What would you recommend very quickly to treat that?
Yeah, vaginal estrogens. As vaginal estrogens don't increase your risk of breast cancer or blood clots, and they're a very effective way of treating it. Non-hormonally, vaginal moisturizers using day to day can be helpful to relieve some of the irritation you can get. And if sex is painful or uncomfortable with dryness, use a good lubricant. So oil-based or oil and water-based. You know, we've worked with the Yes company. They make excellent moisturizers and lubricants. There are other ones, for example, Silk make one also. There's Replens, Regel, lots of different options. If you look in the vaginal atrophy, vaginal symptoms bit on the website, then there's a whole list there.
Fantastic, thank you, Claire. I felt sorry for it was a barrage of questions your way, but as ever, fantastically answered, and I'm sure really helpful. So just in answer to some of the other practical questions that have come in the chat on the right hand side of Zoom, there's a chat. If you click the chat function, all the links are in there. And yes, we will be posting the recording hopefully sometime tomorrow. It will depend on my technical skills and how I manage it, but the plan is to get it out tomorrow, and we'll include in the post as well the links to other useful articles that have come up over the course of the evening. Well, so I'd just like to say a really big thank you to to Clare, to Dr. Clare, to Joe, and to Mel. They've all had a full day's job, you know, under their belt in doing this evening. So you've been fantastic with your engagement and all of your responses. And thank you all very much for joining this evening. We hope you found this webinar really helpful to you as you think about 2020 for the new year. And I wish you all of the very best with your new year, new beginning. Thank you. Take care and good night.
Let me know.